Nick Martinez was nearly unhittable as the Reds sweep the Braves down in Atlanta. And also, can I get a Viva la France?
Viva!
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Reds. My name is Jeff Carr, his name is Steve Offenbaker, and we are lifelong Cincinnati Reds fans, and we've been podcasting about this Cincinnati Reds team. This is like our 12th season when you put them all together, because we love these Reds. Seriously, I got like baby pictures and Reds gear to prove it. Plus, I am also the Locked On MLB channel manager. Locked On Reds, Locked On MLB is all part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team, your Cincinnati Reds, every single day. And every single day, we want to make Locked On Reds for you. We want to make it for everyone. We'll talk about the big thing going on in Reds country. We'll talk about some geeky stats and make them make sense. And we'll overreact to the daily motions of the MLB Ocean and the 162. But hey, look, I'm glad that you're alongside me here today because Ty France is proving his destiny lies along a different path than what we thought whenever the Reds first traded for him. We'll tell you why later on in the show. The force was strong with Alexis, Díaz, and Fernando Cruz on Monday night, and we'll wonder about next year's bullpen. That's coming up here in just a few minutes, but we will start with the chosen one, Nick Martinez, and how he has brought balance to the force of the Reds pitching staff here recently. That's all coming up on today's Locked On Reds podcast that is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can get $5 or bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And Steve, where we will get started here today is Nick Martinez and how he has brought peace, justice, and security to this new pitching empire that the Reds are surviving with.
I just can't even with you right now. Rest in peace, James Earl Jones. My goodness. How many Star Wars references did you just squeeze in there? That was good. That was good on you. That you exceeded my expectations, which
There's
is good
more to
because I am your father. Listen, Nick Martinez is doing things that we have not expected from him. We thought that he might compete for a starting gig. We thought he was going to be a valuable arm to just kind of have around, right, Jeff? We thought, an insurance policy, a dude that can give you some extra innings out of the bullpen, a dude that can start a doubleheader or fill in if somebody's injured. Right now, he's the ace of the staff, and I know you didn't have that written down. I didn't have that written down, but here we are. What an outing for him. Tremendous. 23 of 24 batters were greeted with a strike on the very first pitch. Three total base runners, Jeff, in the whole game. And only one not named Matt Olson. It's brilliant. 7 brilliant innings. I can't be more happy for how this Nick Martinez signing has turned out. You know, when they got him, we all kind of gave a collective, okay, all right, whatever. But boy,
I was calling for it. I was happy that the Reds got Nick Martinez. He was on my offseason wish list. I'm very happy that the Reds got him. And yes, I mean, he was absolutely stellar for the Reds on Monday night. And I kind of want to reiterate the whole Matt Olson thing because Matt Olson had a couple of kind of, BABIP singles, and that was it for the hitting side of things for Atlanta. And by the way, that this was the third win in the third time that the Reds played in Atlanta. So the Reds swept the Braves in Atlanta. Anybody in the comment section from Braves fandom, and any Mets fans in the comment section, you're welcome. So because now the Mets are in the wild card and Atlanta is out of the wild card. But this was a fantastic pitching performance from him and just more of the same. I mean, he had 5 strikeouts in those 7 innings with just 1 walk. He has really kind of come into his own, and especially at a time when the starting pitching staff is all on the injured list. We were looking around, and everybody collectively in Reds country was looking around like, okay, how many more games do they have to pitch? How many more innings do they have to fill? Who's going to fill them? Nick Martinez has been one of those guys because August 5th was the first start in this like run of starts that he has had to make for the Reds every fifth day, Steve. And during that time, since August 5th, he's made 8 starts and he has averaged 5 innings per start. Look, I know that that's not elite. We're not talking about, he's like garnering Cy Young votes with this performance, but he has been absolutely invaluable to a Reds pitching staff that, quite frankly, they were about to call you and me up to see if we could give them some innings.
No, that's absolutely true. I'll say this right now. Overall on the season, Nick Martinez has the best ERA amongst the starters still standing. On the year, he's at 3.67. The only ERAs on the team better than those belong to Brett Suter at 3.43 and Buck Farmer at 2.92. So Nick Martinez has been the man pretty much all season long in whatever role the Reds have asked him to fill, whether it was that long man in the rotation or if it's now filling in as a starter. But I questioned early on, Jeff, Nick Martinez looking like it threw him off his game a little bit to be a starter versus coming out of the bullpen. He seems to have overcome that. He seems to be comfortable now starting games, and it's going to make things really interesting come decision time to keep Nick Martinez around, because his contract, and I listened to your show yesterday, his contract is nowhere near starting pitcher money, and I think he's going to go get starting pitcher money.
Yeah, and that's going to be something that I bet his agent really approaches a lot of different teams with. Like, if you want to sign my player, you are going to give him starting pitching money, because he has a player option for next year for $12 million. He made $14 million this year, so I don't think he's going to take less money to hang around. Mm-hmm. I would be surprised if that were the case. So he'll become a free agent, probably looking for a $15, $16, $17 million deal, maybe for like 2 years or something like that. Maybe even a 1-year deal if a team is like going to guarantee that he gets a starting rotation, like a good shake at a starting rotation spot out of the gate. And that's going to be the hard thing for me, because I really want to see him on this Reds team next year. This Reds pitching staff will not be as deep without him. There's a chance it'll be better. But
let me ask you this: if everyone, I love when we do this exercise, but if everybody's healthy, only wishing made it so, if everybody was healthy, does Nick Martinez even have an opportunity to compete for the starting rotation for the 2025 Reds? I don't see it.
Not for the opening day rotation, no.
Right.
And that's the hard part, because if he wants to be guaranteed a legitimate look at that, he's going to have to go somewhere else. But if he is okay returning to this role next year for the Reds, then my goodness, the Reds need to do whatever they can to bring him back. But that's kind of the whole thing with this. I mean, we're talking about a dude that has been super consistent over the last 3 years. We love to pick out sample sizes, and I have a little bit of a sample size since June 1st that he's looked really good in. But quite frankly, over the last 3 years, 2022, his ERA was 3.47. 2023, his ERA was 3.43. And currently here in 2024, his ERA is 3.46. You know what you're going to get out of Nick Martinez. And when you come into next season with, health concerns and young pitchers trying to make a name for themselves and all this other stuff, there's only a couple of guys on this pitching staff that you know what you know about them. And Nick Martinez would be one of those guys if he's back.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's the thing. Nick Martinez, he has been amazing. And you know who else has looked pretty good lately, Jeffrey? Your guy, Alexis Díaz. He's looked really good of late, and it kind of has us wondering, is that back end of the Reds bullpen, back? We're going to tell you coming up next. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Listen, Jeff and I tell you about the Game Time app all the time. This is what we use when we head down to the banks. We find our favorite restaurant or favorite watering hole establishment. We have a few drinks, have some dinner, and when it's about game time, we jump on the Game Time app. We get our tickets, we head over to the stadium. It's just that easy. And listen, it's not only for MLB tickets. I have a buddy that's heading out to Seattle and is going to check out the Seahawks versus the Dolphins in a couple weeks. He used the Game Time app to grab his tickets. It was super easy for him. All he had to do was download the Game Time app and create an account. He used the promo code LOCKEDONMLB and he got $20 off his already low price because it was his first purchase. The Game Time app gives you all-in pricing. He knew exactly what he was going to pay before he ever clicked that purchase button. He's never been to a game in Seattle, and it shows you the view from your seat. He was able to see exactly what he was going to be able to see from his seat out there in Seattle. So he knew exactly what he was going to get. That's why Jeff and I love this app. We've never had a bad outcome. We've never been disappointed. Our seats are always as advertised. Again, all you have to do to get in on this deal is download the Game Time app, create that account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create your account, redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thanks for making Locked On Reds your first listen today. Now for your second listen, enjoy the Locked On MLB podcast. Host Paul Sullivan, also known as Sully, is here daily to provide national expertise with his trademark humor to help get you ready for the MLB playoffs here in the dog days of summer. Prepare for the Fall Classic with Sully, who has it all covered every single day on Locked On MLB. Available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Jeff, I teased it there at the end of the first segment. Nick Martinez was good last night in Atlanta, but so was the bullpen. Fernando Cruz was good. Alexis Díaz was good. And if you look at their last, 3 outings or so, they've been consistently good, maybe a return to form even. And it makes us wonder, is the back end of this bullpen back?
Not yet. I would actually ask you this question. We didn't really discuss this before the show started, but I would ask you this question. Can Alexis Díaz and Fernando Cruz specifically, these two guys, can they prove between now and the end of the season that they are, in fact, back?
Yes and no. Yes, Alexis Díaz can prove that he is back and be a valuable member of this team in 2025. And there's nothing for me that Fernando Cruz can do to warrant taking up a bullpen spot in the 2025 Reds bullpen. He's 34 years old. He's been inconsistent. I think the Reds have squeezed every ounce of extra they're going to get out of him. And he's one of those relievers where, for me, it's time to move on in the offseason.
Díaz is intriguing to me because since the month of September began, he has not allowed a base runner. And we've talked about him multiple different times on the show, off the show, at the game, all this different stuff. We've talked about Díaz a lot of has he hit a collective wall, not just this season, not just the workload that he has seen this year, which is lesser than in years past. But when you put together the last 2 seasons along with this one, has it all kind of come crashing down on him? Well, the fact that he has started off September so strong at least gives me a little bit of hope that he will be that guy next season. I'm a little bit with you on Fernando Cruz. Fernando Cruz is kind of maddening because what you and I love to talk about, and what I always tell folks, is that when you try to evaluate a relief pitcher, don't look at his ERA, look at his strikeout to walk ratio. That is a phenomenal stat in favor of him, well, at least on the strikeout part. His last 3 outings, 4 innings pitched, 10 strikeouts, and only 1 walk. Now walks have plagued him this year. In fact, it's gone up. His walk rate has gone up year over year, but his strikeout rate has also gone up, and he has been an elite strikeout pitcher. The problem is that what you combine when he's not striking out guys, he gives up league average contact as far as average exit velocity goes, but he's given up a lot of barrels. That's worse than league average, and he's given up a lot of hard hit contact. So when he gets hit bad, and that's why you see his ERA in the 5s.
Yeah, and I'm with you. You can't really look at a reliever ERA. A couple bad outings does it in. And you look at his last 3 outings, Jeff. In his last 3 outings, he's pitched 4 innings, allowed 2 runs on 3 hits. He's only walked one guy, though, in those 4 innings. Do you know how many he struck out in those 4 innings? 10. 10 to 1 strikeouts to walk, I will take. His overall in the season, he's averaging 14.3 strikeouts per 9, 4.6 walks per 9. I don't like to see that walks per 9 anywhere.
It's too high.
Over 3 at all. It's too high. But I'm more concerned about his age, him arriving to the scene relatively late. At 34, the Reds have gotten him into 64 ball games, now 65 ball games this year, counting last night. That's probably excessive for what they should be using Fernando Cruz. Doesn't
that feel low though? Like it feels like he pitched the entire month of April.
No,
May,
it does.
Every single day.
I think that's why the middle of the season was so bad for him. They just used him too much, too early, too often. And I just don't know how a guy that's going to be heading into his age 35 season recovers from that. We've seen breakdown in Ian Jabot as his workload got doubled and doubled. And I'm afraid that's kind of what we're going to see with Fernando Cruz as well. I don't know that you can head into 2025 and safely count on him. Now, that's not to say that he doesn't show up out in Goodyear and look great and they have this bullpen figured out and he only has to pitch in 40 games instead of 60 and maybe he looks lights out. But I don't think you can head into the season counting on him to be your number 2 guy in the back end of this bullpen. Maybe he can play his way onto this team, but you can't count on him to be that guy.
And the big reason why we're considering this is that back in April, if you were to ask us who the alphas of this bullpen are, it's Alexis, Díaz, and Fernando Cruz. And
that's exactly what we said.
And both of them in some way, shape, or form have proven that to be false, at least most way through the season. Hopefully Díaz can kind of get back to that. I don't know that he can get all the way back to alpha, but I will feel better about him if he continues this run of form here in September. But it does have me thinking. Not necessarily who specifically the alpha is for next year, but who do we trust the most when we're going into 2025 and we're looking at the Reds bullpen? And let's forget about contracts for just a moment because there are some guys who have expiring contracts. But if you can bring back anybody, who are the guys that you're most confident in bringing back?
Sam Moll. That's the top of my list. I know he's hurt right now. But
his last appearance doesn't bode well for that, but he has been overall good this year.
Right. I think he's probably been Mr. Reliable right up until he was injured, whether that's a real injury or a phantom injury, whatever that is. He was really good right up to that point. So I think I think we can rely on him.
The Phantom Menace injury?
Oh boy. And then I can't even do this with you. And then Tony Santillan is probably the other guy. Like if I have to take 2 that I think we can rely on, it's those 2 guys. And then on the fringes looking in as Alexis Díaz, because I'm not quite sure who he is right now. But those are the 3 names that come to mind.
Yeah, that's my thing is that I say Alexis Díaz, but I do not say that as he's like written in ink that he's the closer or he's the ace of the bullpen staff. Like that's up for grabs next year. The Reds should definitely be looking for guys that could fill that role, could challenge him and probably overtake him in a race next spring training. They need to challenge him because I feel like what they did with Hunter Green this year was brilliant. They said, you're not the ace de facto. Well, you can get there with some work. And he got there with some work. They kind of wrote Alexis Díaz as the de facto ace of the bullpen into this season after seeing what he did the second half of last year. And they're just like, nah, he's going to be back to normal. And he never really got back to normal, at least here until we get to the month of September. Overall, his performance, everybody's going to point and start screaming, shouting to the clouds and things like this. They're just like, but his saves and his blown saves, I don't care about that. What I care about is like his individual things, the things that he can control. His walk rate has been atrocious. His strikeout rate has been down, and he has been hit hard. You put all those 3 things together, for the most part, you're talking about a very untrustworthy bullpen guy. But here recently, we've seen everything return back to the way it was early 2023. So hopefully he can continue this and bring it into next year, but I'm not writing him in as the bullpen ace yet. I agree with you about Sam Moll. I do think I agree with you about Tony Santillan. I'm intrigued a little bit, and I wrote about this over at CincinnatiRedSox.com. Jacob Junis. Jacob Junis has a mutual option for $7 million. He is another example, and he's only made 2 starts. He's not made 8 starts for me to go crazy about. But he's made 2 admirable starts, and he's made some very nice appearances out of the bullpen in a long relief fashion. He is the kind of guy that would give this bullpen the versatility that it has this year, continue it next year, and do it at a pretty reasonable price. And I know I said take contracts out of this for a minute, so if we don't have to worry about the option whatsoever, I would like to see him back.
Jacob Junis, in his 11 games for the Cincinnati Reds this year, Jeff, he has a 7.2 strikeouts per 9. He has a walks per 9 of 0.7.
That was one of my points, is that looking back at Nick Martinez, who we just talked about, and combining him with Jacob Junis, they are number 9 and number 10 respectively in Major League Baseball in walk rate. They are so elite at not throwing 4 balls in some fashion to a hitter.
All right, Jeff, I think what we know is the bullpen is going to be one of our biggest talking points this offseason. And while they have looked better lately, they haven't done quite enough for either one of us to feel comfortable in saying we've got our guys.
No, not quite, Steve. They got to make some moves, and they got to do some considering about this bullpen. But look, the ability to destroy a planet is insignificant next to the power of Ty France. And coming up next, we'll tell you where he fits on next year's Reds roster. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, but now we have something a little bit different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket with YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. And with that $5 bet, I always tell you this, put it on the Ellie Parlay. Didn't actually hit in Atlanta last night, but got a good feeling about it as the Reds are heading to St. Louis. Ellie loves to play against the Cardinals, and he's going to get at least 2 total bases, a stolen base, and 1 run scored. That's the Ellie Parlay. You put those 3 things together, usually pays out about 4-1. So head over to FanDuel with a $5 wager on the Ellie Parlay and get yourself 3 free weeks of NFL Sunday Ticket from FanDuel. That's over at FanDuel.com/lockedon. They're America's #1 sportsbook. You can catch every pitch of the Reds' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search the word Reds. Also, make sure you bookmark CincinnatiRedsTalk.com. A lot of great written content over there. I'm writing over there. James Rapin's writing over there. Greg Kuffner from Reds Daily over on Twitter is writing there as well. That's CincinnatiRedsTalk.com. Bookmark it today. Something else you can bookmark, Steve, is the fact that Ty France is going to be here next year.
Viva la France!
Viva! And we've been talking a lot about the pitching from Monday night's win because, quite frankly, the pitching is the reason that the Reds won. They allowed 0 runs. And the Reds, they only scored 1. And that was thanks to Ty France. He went 2 for 4, had the only RBI on Monday. So, game-winning RBI, all that wonderful stuff. But he is a guy that, honestly, whenever the Reds first got him, we both were like, great, sounds fun. Whatever, Seattle's throwing him away. I guess we'll give them some cash and we'll see what we got. And what we got so far has been pretty encouraging.
I've been seeing the comment section, Jeff. I know you read everything that gets written to us as well. And there's been a lot of people talking about Ty France being the everyday first baseman next year, that he should be in that conversation, or he should be that guy. And I know that you pushed back on it a little bit. We didn't go that route when we did our way too early lineups on the live show last week. But I wanted to ask you this in a blind taste test, Jeffrey. If you have to pick one of these as your heir apparent, your starting first baseman, let's say heading into spring training, if you're making a depth chart before spring training, is your first baseman the guy who has a slash line of 266, 341, 412, or is your first baseman the guy that has a slash line of 243, 291, 414? While you think a bonus statistic, the first guy has a career OPS plus of 114. The second guy has a career OPS plus of 88.
I mean, just by the stats, I know who we're talking about here, because I can guess. But just by the stats, you take the 114 OPS plus guy, plus the fact that he has 6 seasons that he's done that with.
Yes, that is Ty France. The first guy is Ty France, 266, 341, 412, an OPS of 114. The other guy, that is Christian Encarnacion-Strand in his very short major league career, 243, 291, 414, 88 OPS plus, or as I like to call that, 12% below league average.
And this is kind of where, when we were doing our lineup talk the other day, I'm curious about how serious the Reds are about overhauling the outfield and who their first baseman is. Mm-hmm. Because we'll see. Like, they might just pencil in Christian Encarnacion-Strand. And quite frankly, he's going to have some sort of hand that is reminiscent of Luke Skywalker's because he broke 2 wrist bones and tore a ligament, and who knows what's there anymore. He might even have a wrist. Might have to have some sort of biomechanical wrist or something. That doesn't exist, but that'd be kind of cool.
So basically, you're saying we need the artificial hands for both CES and Joe Burrow in Cincinnati, right?
Really,
we just
really got to get that going. Where's that droid at that put that thing together? Anyway, so we don't know what we're going to get out of him. The only concern that I have is that over the last 2 years, yes, his slugging percentage for his career, for Ty France, for 6 years, is over 400. But for the last 2 seasons, looking at his time in Seattle included in this, his slugging percentage has been under 390. So we're not talking about a big bopper. We're not talking about a power hitting guy. I like him more as a bench piece, more of a depth guy that, you can bring in as a good pinch hit. If you need him to give somebody a day off at first base, that's fine. And quite frankly, I think the best case scenario for this team is that they go get a couple of outfielders and they put Spencer Steer at first base. I don't think they're going to go out and get a first baseman, although we could salivate a little bit about the chances that they go get Pete Alonso. But I think at the end of the day, the easier answer and the better answer for me is that Spencer Steer plays first base. And you work CES in. You see where he's at, see how he can get better, because it was clear that the injury sapped him a little bit, but my goodness, he couldn't hit a baseball for the better part of 2 months before hitting the injured list. So I cannot, in good conscience, just say, yeah, we're handing him the first base job on opening day right now.
Yeah, here's the one part of our lineup discussion that I am going to stand by. I'm really considering Ty France getting an opportunity here. But I do stand by that CES is not going to be a guy sitting on the end of the Reds bench next to David Bell, hoping to get into play. If he's not starting, he's not on this team. He'll be in Louisville. I think he has options. It would make no sense at all to have him as a bench guy for the Cincinnati Reds in 2025. So you're right. It is very interesting because the outfield really depends a whole lot on this. I don't see them getting enough outfielders. I think they'll sign one.
Yeah.
We're asking for 2. They'll get 1. That's going to be a right fielder, I think. Spencer Steer will stay in left. TJ Friedel will stay in center. This first base conversation, I really think, comes down to CES in France, and I think Jeimer Candelario is your designated hitter next
Juan
season.
Soto does play right field. Yes, he does.
I don't think there's a lot of moves that they're going to be able to make on that infield. I think it's getting very narrowly defined here pretty quick. And Ty France and his success, I think, has complicated the conversation. I don't think when they brought him in here, they thought he was going to be this dude. I think this is a surprise. I think they were looking for a body. They were looking for somebody that could hold their own at the major league level. They weren't expecting to get a guy that was going to make us have this conversation about who's playing first base next year.
Yeah, it's funny. I tweeted something about, whenever France got this RBI and Reds go up 1-0, I was just like, boy, what a nice find that Ty France has had. And somebody replied to me, who was just like, yeah, amongst all of these other guys, and he listed like all the different players that the Reds have acquired this year that haven't done anything at all. And it's just like, yeah. It's kind of like that guy that takes every line on FanDuel just so that he can hit at least one of the lines. Not going to say that's what I tried to do on the first NFL Sunday, but kind of how it felt.
How'd that work out for you?
It didn't work out very well. But, I mean, Ty France has really shown that the Reds can feel good about their depth, and he is under team control through arbitration for another year. Now, next year will be his last year of arbitration, so that's the only year of team control past this season. And he made about $6.7 million this year, so I still think that it's very rare that a player loses money in arbitration. He probably gets a raise to about 7.5, maybe 8 million, something like that. So that might be a little bit interesting depending on what the Reds see from him. I still think that they keep him and they pay him that money. But overall, I think that the Reds have really found somebody that you can feel good about the depth. And I know we did this back in February, and it seems like we might be starting this again. But Santiago Espinal and Ty France makes them feel good.
Where are they going to play all these guys, Jeff? Where's everybody going to play?
Be careful to not choke on your ambition, often, Baker. And that's where we will end today's podcast. Rest in peace, James Earl Jones. One of the most iconic characters that, I mean, quite frankly, I think Darth Vader might be one of the most influential characters of my lifetime. So there's that. Thank you so much for that. James Earl Jones, rest in peace. And before we go, I would like to invite you to join our Locked On Reds Insiders. Text the word insider to 513-597-0944. You'll get a free 14-day trial, $4.99 a month after that. We'll text Reds every single day, and you could become that friend that everybody comes to for Reds information. Again, text the word insider to 513-597-0944. Let's talk some Reds baseball.
That's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Reds. Thanks for always making us your first listen every day. Everydayers coming up. We're going to continue to talk about the endings of this season and what we can expect for the Reds in the offseason and beyond. We're going to gather up all the information about this team and keep you covered every single day. Go make your second listen, the Locked On MLB podcast. Prepare for the Fall Classic with Sully, who has it covered every single day as well. You can find a link to Locked On MLB in the description of today's show, so you don't even need to go and search for it. It's part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Until next time, Jeff and I are going to gather up all of that news and bring it back here to keep you locked on Reds every single day.
May the force be with you.